So it's time for another walkabout. It's been a while and things have changed, but of course a lot of things are still the same. But basically right now, in October, all of the trees have recovered from their trimming. We trimmed all of the trees on this side of the driveway. This is a northeast section of the grove, and they all look beautiful. They've all come back wonderfully. And so let's start with the first row, because that's what's right in front of us. This, of course, we've done a couple videos on this particular tree. This is a Fairchild, and I am busy top working it to ST Maui. So that's ST Maui. It's still got a ways to go because I've got, of course, these grafts have to grow, and then I'll cut it back some more. Right next door, this used to be an Irwin tree. We didn't get a lot of people wanting Irwin mangoes, and so top worked it to a very popular variety for us, which is Kerry mango. That's Duncan. It's a small Duncan tree, and I'm trying to keep it small because our other Duncan trees have gone sort of crazy. So far, everything's pretty good. Nam Doc Mai number 4, which is the small version of Nam Doc Mai. And this is Pineapple Pleasure. It's doing very nicely. Looks like a lot of nice, healthy growth. And one thing that I didn't realize until just a moment ago is this, on Rosa, we have flowers. It's October, and Rosa is flowering up here. There was one year that I got a mango, only one mango, in February. So maybe if these flowers hold, we'll have mangoes in February. Really, really fun. I really never noticed that until just a minute ago. And it's just on that south side of the tree. The north side I've cut back, and I'm trying to top work this branch to buttercream. There are a few flowers on the north side, but they're further behind. They're much younger at an earlier stage than the ones on the south side of the tree. This is, of course, turpentine, looking very healthy. Hopefully we'll have fruit this year. Last year we really didn't have much turpentine. Valkyrie. Hopefully we'll get some fruit from that too. A lot of people love that variety. And then we have lemon meringue here, also known as poke flight, and over here. Both these trees we try and keep down. You can see we cut a major branch probably 2 years ago from there. It's a rather vigorous variety. This is Beverly. This is another Kerry tree. And trying to keep that small too, so you can see a few places where we cut. This is Sweet Tart. This is a potted, it was grafted with a bud graft. You can actually see that down here is where it was grafted when it was very young. And we have a bunch of sweet tart in the groves, but we've top worked older trees, and so the grafts are much higher than that. They have the same fruit though, exactly the same. Here's Van Dyke. Van Dyke's a nice old variety, but this tree was really big, and it's hard to really compete with some of the new varieties. So I am in the process of top working half of this tree. And I haven't actually grafted anything, but we did cut this back. This is what I'll use for grafting onto a 1 gallon tree. And then like a graft onto this shoot probably. After I get some of the new variety going in this area, then we'll cut this branch off. And also add some more places on the other part of the tree. So half of it will be Van Dyke and half will be another variety. Here's Duncan that we're trying to get smaller. Here's a cut from 2 years ago. That was a big lateral branch. All of the Duncan's a heavy producer, so when you have a long branch and a lot of fruit at the end of it, it just drags it to the ground. So after the fruit was off that year, cut that way back. This is Zill, and all of the top part is Zill. And when the fruit starts hanging, it sort of pulls those branches down. But the lower part, I have top worked to Venus, which is a nice late variety, very popular flavor and everything. So hopefully this year we'll get Venus fruit on this lower part. And hopefully we'll get Zill on the top. Then we have, this is one of our Glen trees. This is another one. This is Edward, another nice old variety. Glen and Edward are very popular mangoes. And back to another Glen over here. This is Dot. Really like Dot too. That's another old variety, and it's actually named after Dorothy Zill. Very special flavor. Another Beverly, of course that's a late season variety. This is Southern Blush, and Southern Blush is a very nice mango, but it does seem to have some problems with mango bacterial black spot. So I'm trying to sort of gently transfer or transform some of the tree to another variety, but I got this really big branch back, but I'll have to probably cut another branch back too, because this just isn't getting much light at all, so it's hard to really create a half of a tree when the rest of the tree is very dominant, hugging all the light. This is Bushman. The tree had gotten big and scraggly, cut it way back to top work some of it. This graft here is Sugarloaf, or E4, and it's doing very nicely. Trying to get one going on the other side. I had a fail on this particular shoot. A fail here also. I tried a top cleft, and this one is looking good so far. I didn't date it, but I think it's been on for about 3 weeks. It's still nice and green, so hopefully that will be our second branch of Sugarloaf on this tree. Of course, got a lot of nice Cushman still also. This is one of our Kent trees. Kent's a nice mango. It happens to have a late season. 2 seasons ago, 2018, Kent had a lot of problems with mango bacterial black spot, and so I was trying to minimize our exposure. I always want to keep some Kent, but I didn't want to have a bunch of fruit that wasn't good. So cut back this tree pretty severely, and almost everything you see on it is pina colada. So that should stay a lot smaller, and the Kent will be taller. Interesting thing though, in 2019, Kent had very little problem with mango bacterial black spot. So It's hard to guess what the next season's going to hold. This is another Kent tree. It's all Kent at the moment. Here's Bombay. It's always a struggle to keep Bombay small. And you might notice it's on sort of a mound, and that's because it was partially knocked over during one of the hurricanes, and we propped it up and covered the roots, and so that's why it's a little higher than its surroundings. And this is the oldest tree that we planted. It was 3 years old when I planted it, and it's a Julie. It's pretty happy here, but not the biggest tree in the grove. This is another lemon meringue. It's a younger one than the other ones we saw. And here we have Floragon, and this branch right here is Floragon, and the rest I have top worked to Edgar. And Edgar is a sort of a little known but very much appreciated variety, and so happy to have that in the grove. This is one of our cogsall trees. The cogsall is just a real pretty tree, and the mango's pretty also, and the tree doesn't get huge. We do need to trim it back a little bit, but I trimmed it back. Big branch here a couple years ago, and then I got some scions of new varieties, and this was the only place that was like perfect to graft them, and so here I have random varieties in the middle of the cogsall tree. So it's crazy, yeah, this is K3 or Kathy, and Kesar, and I think that one is Zill-Indo-Chinese. I have Zill-Indo-Chinese around. Not sure why I put it there, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is. And what next here? This is Namdok Mai. At one point I was grafting Namdok Mai number 4, the dwarf version of Namdok Mai, onto this tree, but then I think it cut it back and grafted onto the shoots. But I think all the big stuff is Namdok Mai, the regular one. So yeah, we just have to trim it more. Here's our original Zill-Indo-Chinese tree. And it's looking better than it used to. It was really a Charlie Brown tree before, and it's showing a lot of nice growth. A couple years ago, I put a lot of food scraps, mango peels and rotten mangoes out here, and it really helped this tree a lot. Still sort of looks a little bit lanky, but fruit are great. Here's Bailey's Marble, and it's just across the aisle from Bombay, which is one of its parents. And Bailey's Marble, we had some fruit this past season, but it was not as much fruit as we normally get. So I'm hoping that means that we'll get a ton of mangoes, Bailey's Marble mangoes, next season. Don't know until you get there, though. Is Pettigrew. This was one of the latest varieties this year. It's a little bit difficult to pick because you pick it when the skin is still green, and of course all the leaves, these should be green, and so it definitely hides up there in the branches. Yeah, one of the latest, and really delicious. So very happy to have the Pettigrew. Here's a Kent tree. And we have a younger Kent tree over here. This was a replacement tree. One of them the previous tree had gotten run over, and so had to put another tree there, so we put a Kent. And I guess we'll just sort of point out a few things. So this big tree is Valencia Pride, very popular mango, rather difficult to keep it small, the tree small. This is Jahangir, and that is a fairly dwarf variety, very nice fruit, sort of round, and Indian type mango, Indian variety, and very similar in flavor to Neelam and White Piri. This is Juliet, which is a cross between Julie and Gary, and it's a bigger tree than Julie, and sort of a smoother mango than Julie. This is another lemon meringue. And this is an interesting tree. That it's a little bit younger than the next two, which those next two are Valencia Prides that were planted 20 years ago. Planted most of this section of the grove in November of 1999, so just under 1 month short of 20 years. This was later, but still, this is a Valencia Pride, and it's darn small for Valencia Pride, so I'm guessing that it's on a rootstock that is somewhat dwarfing to this variety, completely random, or sort of an accidental outcome for grafted tree. It wasn't like, oh, let's test Valencia Pride out on these different rootstocks. It just happened to be the one I bought from a grafting nursery, and it's very manageable, and that's unusual for Valencia Pride. So let's get back into the grove, the main part. This is Jakarta. Usually we take out 1 or 2 of the major branches in the center of the tree every year when we do our trimming. Still, it's pretty vigorous. But the nice thing with this, with Jakarta on our property, is we get 2 and sometimes 3 crops of mangoes from it. I mean, just different blooms, different parts of the trees bloom at different times, and so it ends up to be a lot of mangoes, and a lot of people really enjoy Jakarta. Here's a cherry tree, and it's a younger tree. I don't think it's a dwarf cherry. I think it's on I think this is the normal growth rate for our growth. We don't fertilize and irrigate. Just use organic fertilizer, rock powders and stuff, and they don't get a lot of water, just enough to survive, and then hopefully optimize. This particular tree is Graham. It has a very, our tree has a very distinctive growth habit. It's not all Grahams, but I can, if I'm suddenly see the tree, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the Graham, because the branching is so different. Graham is, I think, a seedling of Julie, and it's actually a really nice fruit. I'm preparing some scions here, and I didn't get to them in time, so I'm just going to break off. I guess I've got the pruners. I'll just cut off the new growth, and when I do that, more energy is going to go to these lateral buds, and so it should be, this one has nice bud on it right now. I'll try and remember to graft that tomorrow. Anyway, these scions should be perfect to use maybe in 5 days or so. But yeah, Graham is a variety that A lot of people are not grafting now, and we have a lot of customers who really like it. So I'm making 1 gallon plants of Graham and about 20 other varieties. Big job. Here is a tree that I've top worked to carry, another one. And the previous variety wasn't, the fruit wasn't really selling very well. And of course, after I top worked the whole tree, I've had customers asking for that particular variety. Oh well. This is Pinsengman, which is a great mango from Thailand, and there are a lot of Thai mango varieties that end with mun, M-U-N, and every one that ends with that, the name has that at the last part of the name, is supposed to be eaten green. And that's the case with Pinsengman, but it's the only one that I know of that is also delicious ripe. So it's a ripe or green variety, and it's very popular. So a lot of those. Here's another Pinsengman tree here. Our other Thai saw. Definitely need to trim that one back this next season too. Everything's reachable still, but you want to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. This is ice cream mango from Trinidad and Tobago, and it's very unusual, very nice flavor and consistency. It's not a crazy heavy producer, so we've got a lot of people wanting a few fruit. There we go. Well, it's hard to recognize some of these without their fruit on, but this one, I believe, is another Namdak Mai. The younger tree, but also, we've been working on keeping it small. The previous, probably 3 years ago that we cut this back. And this one is lemon meringue. It's another situation where the tree was young when a storm came and knocked it over, and we covered the roots, so it's on a little bit of a mound because of that. This is Dupuis Saigon, very vigorous tree, a dense grower. We cut it back 2 years ago. And so last year we had some fruit, but not a ton of fruit. And so we're looking forward to next year being really good. And then, we haven't gotten around to cleaning up these branches, but this is Kit. And this tree was growing into the Dupuis Saigon and also, just younger and large. And unfortunately, the Kit this year was really affected by the mango bacterial black spot, and so it was very discouraging because we had a lot of fruit that just wasn't saleable. So I thought it would be time to reduce our exposure, have fewer Kit trees. We'll always have Kit, but didn't want to have as many. So we took out big branch here, and on the other side, this was a couple years ago, it's an older cut, but basically it is ready to start for me to get out here and start top working it. There's a lot of nice green shoots here that would be perfect to graft onto. So I've got to decide what variety to put on this tree and start doing it. there's a lot of top working opportunities around, and so I don't want to like make everything Sugarloaf, for example, everything orange sherbet. You know, you have to sort of, you know, get everything represented. This is a younger tree, but it's kit also, and so this is a much more manageable size, and right next door to the other kit. So we might leave a little bit of growth on, the kit growth on that tree for this next season. I'm not sure, because we could get another year of kit mangoes from that. And this tree here is Palmer, an old variety and a late variety also. It's you know, it's a nice mango, and it just is, you know, a lot of people prefer the newer varieties. It's definitely a variety that we are making 1 gallon trees out of, though, because it has its place in well, if you have only one mango tree, it probably won't be a Palmer, but if you have a collection, Palmer would be a good tree for it. This is Malika, and it's definitely got a strange growth habit in here, and that's because one of the hurricanes had damaged the leading trunk, central leader, and we had to cut it back here, and so then we have these horizontal branches coming out, and then eventually, you know, they become vertical. But a very, very odd kind of growth habit there. This is a cherry tree, and yeah, it's another case of, you know, with a 20-year-old tree that wasn't consistently trimmed for all 20 of the years. We are always cutting back something, so it's doing nicely, but we've got, you know, like this growth in the center of the tree is sort of odd. I mean, there's one shoot here, but as you can see here, this is probably from 4 years ago that we cut a branch out of this part, and then more recently, that was the squirrels like to eat mango seeds, so this one was on this little perch that used to be a branch, and you know, they get right into the seed and eat the kernel. But yeah, so that used to be a branch up there. This is one of my first grafting or successful grafts of mangoes. This was before I even moved here into the farm. It took like 5 years to buy the farm. So I was, you know, hope springs eternal, and I was, you know, grafting little mango seed onto mango seedlings, and you can tell where the graft is because it's a whole different color. You know, this is the graft. I used a top cleft graft at that point, but you know, it's always, you know, it stands out every time I look at it. It's like, oh yeah, that was one that I did. And this is also a cherry tree. And here is Pomcimea, and it's sort of a sprawling tree. As branches go crazy, but you know, we try and cut back portions of the tree every year, and love the fruit. It's great. Here's something that I didn't remember the other day when I was preparing scions. This is a Beverly tree, and it was really damaged with Hurricane Wilma. Yeah, it was 2005, and it looked like it wasn't going to survive. So I planted a replacement tree right here, and of course, you know, this is back where the original tree had, you know, like in 2005, the storm took it all the way back to that point, and now of course it's normal size, you know, very green tree. So we have this little tree next to it. conversation piece now. Here's Neelam, and this tree is a very heavy producer, and there, if you don't thin the clusters, it can spell, like trouble with a T, and that is what happened a couple of years ago. We had a major branch break, and this is, it's ripped down the back side of this, but this was the branch, and these two branches that coming out of the side of this area were here, but they weren't as big. But this, this upright branch just cracked because there was so much fruit on it. So anyway, I try and thin the fruit, but it's always hard. It's a matter of time, energy, and inclination, and that inclination thing is the problem. It's tough to get rid of fruit, and also, when it's out of reach, it's even more difficult. And this is the last tree in the grid. This particular one is another Malika. Interesting thing about this this Malika and the one at the beginning of this row, or at the end, whichever way you want to do it, is that there will be years when the fruit, this tree will be loaded with fruit, and the other one won't have much fruit at all, and vice versa. And it's like basically the same environment, and they can be very different, and I'm not really sure why, because they're all genetically identical. So whatever. This is a cherry tree, and this one happens to be on its working rootstock. This is our Alano sapodilla, and we have a lot of sapodilla fans, but these are just not ready. They're coming along. We've got different sizes, but nothing's ready on this tree. I really, I try and keep an eye on it, but basically I start noticing it when our big dog starts hanging around this tree, because she is definitely an addict, and when she has a much better nose than I do, so I sort of go by when she starts hanging around the tree, it must have some action. This is Kaimito, or star apple, and there's lots of little fruit. Of course, it's not going to develop all of these fruit, because that's crazy, but these are all the old flowers. It flowers like crazy, and it sets fruit, and then it drops some of the fruit because it can't hold as much. But this was during Hurricane Irma. This tree toppled over, and so we had to have a bobcat come in and dump a bunch of sand on the roots after we propped it up, because once it goes over, all the roots come out of the ground. So anyway, it's not a pretty situation, but it still makes fruit. And this is tamarind. We're trying to keep it just really small. I like tamarind, but need to grow things besides it, because it's hard to harvest the fruit when it's, the pods, when it's really tall. And I've got mango growing next to it here. This is a seedling mango. I dumped a bunch of seeds and peels and stuff in this area a few years ago, and that's the product of that. So what I'd like to do is cut it back and graft onto it, so that it'll be a known variety. And one of the things that's sort of interesting to do in this situation is just to leave one small branch, the original tree, because you never know if a variety is going to be like exceptional or not. When you plant a seed, I don't even know what kind of seed this is. because it was a big pile of random seeds. But if I cut it back, graft onto everything except for one shoot, then in perhaps another 5 years, that shoot would have fruit on it, and we could evaluate it. If it's good, then of course we can make more trees with the scions from that part of the tree. And here we have dwarf Hawaiian. And sorry, 2 dwarf Hawaiian trees. And this is interesting because, again, this is about as similar a situation as you can get. They're right next to each other, like 25 feet apart maybe. And this tree on the west side does not have new growth on it. And this tree is full of new growth. So what that means probably is that the western tree is probably going to get fruit first this next season, and then the eastern tree will get fruit a little bit later. And that's, I guess, would only be true as long as the western tree isn't late in putting out new growth. If this growth gets hardened off and then this other tree puts out new growth, then that changes the schedule. Here's a Ryan tree. Ryan has been a great mango for us. Not many people grow it. It's hard to find the trees, so that's another one that I've been working on grafting onto 1 gallon seedlings. But Ryan is a large fruit, very tasty, no fiber, and it sort of has 2 seasons for us a lot of times. So it's available for a long period of time in the summer. This is the base tree is a Tommy Atkins. I was resisting planting Tommy Atkins because I'm not a fan. I got talked into it, and so I tried it out for a few years, decided I just couldn't have it in the grove, and so I've top worked it. Right here, this is all sweet tart, and sweet tart is a lot nicer fruit to pick and to enjoy than Tommy Atkins. I'm just a lot happier having that on the tree. This tree I call Elephant. I'm not sure what the real name is. I thought it was Elephant Tusk, and I looked on the internet, and it doesn't look like the mango that's called Elephant Tusk. But it was a variety that I really couldn't give away. I gave it away, but people didn't, come back and say, "Gee, that was great." It was, very nice texture and everything, but just really wasn't, like a popular taste. And so I cut it back to top work. I didn't get around to doing the top work part, so then I had to cut it back again, and finally, got some other varieties growing, and then we tasted this particular variety green, and green is the way to eat it. And so now trying to encourage all the elephant foliage and fruit that I can, because it's a very popular green mango. It's all a matter of finding the right customers, because a lot of our customers, of course, like ripe fruit. Here is a lemon zest tree, and I'm actually prepared some scions on the top of the tree. It's such a nice variety that I didn't want to just cut the branches out of the tree before, creating some scions. It has gotten a little big, and as you can sort of tell, the lower branches are getting shaded out, not quite as lush as the top branches. So I want to thin out the top. So it's a 2-stage process for me, and that is like preparing the scions, getting the scions off, and then cutting the branch back. So I'll thin out the top, and over the course of a few years it will become shorter. This is the other side of this, the dwarf Hawaiian, that is either ahead or behind of the one that is just to the east. And we have a fig, a couple figs that I put in the ground a long time ago, and they survived years of neglect. This is Molish, another kind of sapodilla, and we've got a lot of fruit, but this particular variety gets a lot bigger, and so it's many months before that's going to be ready. This is a kit tree. Got a nice pile of mulch here, sort of out of the way. So then here's a black sapote, and I am looking forward to black sapote season. This particular variety of fruit tends to produce more fruit, than it can support. A lot of times I have breaks in branches and stuff, but again, it's hard for me to take fruit off. And so, when we have a bunch like this, and we have a larger fruit and then a couple smaller fruit, then it's easier for me to cut it off, the smaller fruit. But I'm having a problem cutting that one too. I'll do one, but not the other one. But yeah, I definitely should come out here and try and thin all of the fruit, because it really is a bad problem with with getting the making the branches break. It's a the black sapote is also known as chocolate pudding fruit, and definitely has a pudding-like consistency, and it's very black once it's ripe. Jaboticaba. This one went over in Hurricane Irma and propped it back up, and it looks like it's going to be ready to give fruit. I hope it fruits nicely. That's usually February, March that we get some fruit on that, and it'll be very easy to pick. This is also Jaboticaba, and this tree never produces as well as the other one, and this particular tree got knocked over a lot of times when it was younger, and the other one never got knocked over until Irma. So even though they're very similar situations, one produces much better than the other. So that's sort of a, I don't know, it really wasn't a quick tour of the northeast part of the Grove, but it's been a while since I've done a walkabout, so there's a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of things that are looking good for next season. So hopefully we'll have a lot of nice mangoes in 2020.